He earned a medal in Europe and a jail sentence back home. That's how it starts. Not with parades, not with handshakes, but with silence, thick, southern, and deliberate. You're in Georgia, 1946, a town where the courthouse stands tall, but justice keeps its eyes low. The air smells like pine and sweat, and something else, something rotten under all that whitewashed paint. You hear the creak of wood steps beneath your shoes. Every door you pass seems to be listening, and not one of them opens. The place is called Briarfield. You won't find it on any postcard. Not unless someone paints in the ghosts. Down at the train station, a dozen white soldiers step off with laughter in their mouths, and girls waiting in dresses too clean for war. People wave. Hands reach out. Flags wave. Names are called. Then comes Elijah. Corporal Elijah Bell. He steps down last. Bronze star pinned to his chest. Shoulders square. Eyes scanning the crowd for a face that isn't there. No cheers. No flags. No handshakes. Just a long, slow quiet. The kind that dares you to speak. Elijah walks with a limp, earned from dragging two wounded men off a battlefield in France. But no one here asks about that. A boy points. His father shushes him. An old man turns away like seeing Elijah hurt something he doesn't want to name. He makes it halfway down Main Street before the first words hit. You think that uniform changes who you are? It comes from a porch shadow, low and slick with venom. Elijah doesn't stop. Not yet. Later, at the general store, he buys a razor and a clean pair of socks. The teenage clerk doesn't say a word, just pushes the receipt like he's afraid it might bite. As Elijah turns to leave, a man stumbles through the door. White. Drunk. Mean. What's your kind doing in uniform? He says it loud enough for the whole store to hear. Elijah's jaw tightens. He's tired. Still has mud from Belgium on his boots. He says nothing. Then the man shoves him. Just once. But once is enough. Elijah catches his balance and raises a hand. Not to strike, just to steady. He grabs the man's wrist. A trained soldier's instinct. The man stumbles. Falls. Hits his head on the counter's edge. Blood. Panic. A scream from the back. And within the hour, the sheriff's there. He doesn't ask what happened. He just cuffs Elijah. The walk through town is slow. Measured. Public. A black soldier in cuffs. A white judge waiting. Inside the courthouse, the ceiling fan creaks. The judge's bench looms like a pulpit built on power, not mercy. Judge Roy Wallace. He doesn't look at Elijah like a man who's served. He looks at him like a problem finally in reach. The trial is quick. No defense. No real questions. Just a summary and a sentence. 6 months in county jail for assault. No one gasps. No one protests. Because in this town, medals don't weigh more than skin. And justice? It knows exactly who it's looking at. The jail cell is small, barely room to stretch your legs. The walls sweat in the heat, and the iron bars groan every time someone walks by like they're tired of holding people. Elijah sits on the lower bunk, back straight, jaw clenched. His uniform is gone, replaced by rough cotton prison clothes that hang off him like borrowed shame. But he still wears the bronze star around his neck, tucked under the fabric, close to his chest. Not for pride, for memory. Each day passes with the same sounds. Boots on concrete, the rattle of trays, the barked orders of men who don't look you in the eye. But every night, Elijah polishes that metal. He turns it over in his hands like it's a map, like maybe it'll remind him where he's from, or where he's supposed to go when this ends. If it ends. Because back in Europe, he was a hero. Here, he's just another black man behind bars. You watch the guards watch him. Some with boredom. Some with that slow burn contempt that doesn't need words to hurt. But Elijah never flinches. He just hums to himself. Gospel. Old war marching tunes. Snatches of French he picked up in Marseilles. It's the only sound in that cell some nights. And sometimes the only hope. Then one night, everything changes. You smell it before you see it. Smoke. Not from a cigarette. Not from the stove in the mess. This smoke is angry. You hear the alarm ring out. A short, frantic burst that breaks the dead air like a cracked bell. Boots pound past the cell. Someone yells. Then another voice, louder. Judge Wallace's house is on fire. The words hang in the air like sparks. You watch Elijah stand slowly. He walks to the bars, peers down the hallway. Another prisoner whistles, low and soft. Guess somebody finally got tired of begging. And then, a shuffle of shoes. Not the guards this time. A man in a white shirt, sleeves rolled up, sweat already blooming across his chest, appears outside the cell. It's the sheriff, not the same one who arrested him. This one's younger, and he looks nervous. Elijah Bell. Elijah turns, doesn't salute, doesn't move. We need your help. He says it fast, like if he says it slow it might taste worse. Elijah doesn't blink. Help who? Judge Wallace, the man says, swallowing hard. His wife and daughter are still inside. And suddenly, you see it on his face, on Elijah's. The recognition, not just of danger, of irony. The man who took his freedom now needs him to save his family. The hallway buzzes with more voices. The guard opens the cell, keys shaking. Elijah doesn't move. Why me? Because, the sheriff stammers, you're the only one who's been through fire and come back alive. It's not a compliment. It's a plea. Elijah steps out, silent. He doesn't run, but he walks fast. Out of the cell, out of the hallway, out into a town that still doesn't know how to look him in the eye. And now, they're going to have to. Because the war's not over. It just came home. The fire eats the sky. From blocks away, you can see the smoke twisting upward like a question no one wants to answer. Red-orange light pulses behind the trees, flickering like the heartbeat of something angry, something long overdue. By the time Elijah reaches the Wallace estate, half the town is already there. Standing, watching, silent, not helping. The house is grand, columns cracked now by heat, roof sagging at one edge, windows glowing like open wounds. Flames crawl across the second floor, hissing with satisfaction. Elijah doesn't wait for orders. He steps through the crowd, and for the first time since he came home, people move aside for him. They don't cheer. They don't call his name. But they part like they know what he's about to do, and what they can't. Near the porch, Judge Wallace is kneeling on the ground, soot streaking his white shirt, eyes wide and wild. He's shouting names, his wife, his daughter, but not going in. His hand is burned. His courage is somewhere else. When he sees Elijah, his jaw works like he's trying to speak, but can't find the words. He doesn't need to. Elijah meets his eyes, and for the first time in this story, power shifts. The judge, who once held Elijah's fate in a courtroom, now holds nothing. Elijah simply says, "Where?" Wallace points. "Back room. Upstairs. Right side." No hesitation. Elijah pulls off the prison shirt, ties it around his mouth, and disappears through the front door, swallowed by the smoke like a soldier returning to the front. Inside, it's chaos. Wood groans. Glass explodes in tiny screams. Smoke wraps around his throat and ears like it's trying to speak. But Elijah's body remembers. He moves through the heat like it's a map he's memorized. Duck under beam. Step wide over broken tile. Count to 3 after every gust of flame. And then, a voice. Small. Coughing. He finds the girl first, tucked into a closet, arms over her head, eyes wide with fear. He scoops her up gently, whispers low, steady words like, "You're safe now, and just breathe with me." The hallway behind him collapses. He kicks through another door and finds Wallace's wife, unconscious near a dresser. Her dress smoldering at the hem, her hand still clutched around a photo frame. Elijah grabs her, pulls her over his shoulder, and runs. Down the stairs, through the smoke, out the door, into silence. And then, the crowd exhales. They don't cheer. They don't move. They just watch. As Elijah lays Wallace's family gently on the grass and steps back, shirt scorched, sweat pouring down his face, hands shaking. Someone finally speaks. A woman whispers, "He saved them." Another, "He went in alone." And you see it. That moment, that crack, where people start to see what they refused to before. Not a prisoner. Not a problem. A man. Wallace stands up slowly, walks to Elijah, stops a foot away. His mouth opens, then closes. He can't say it. He wants to, but can't. Elijah stares at him. No anger. No triumph. Just tired. Because this fire wasn't the first he's walked through. And it won't be the last. You follow Elijah as he walks back to the jail, quiet now, Ash clinging to his arms like tattoos of every battle he never asked for. No one tries to stop him. No one dares. The sheriff trots behind, still catching his breath. But Elijah? He moves like gravity finally recognizes him. The metal doors of the jail don't squeal this time. They open with something close to shame. He steps into the hallway, back into his cell, and closes the door himself. The sheriff doesn't speak. He just locks it, with hands that don't stop shaking. Later that night, You sit in the dim light of the corridor as Elijah cleans himself with a tin basin and a rag. He doesn't hum, doesn't touch the metal tonight, just stares at the water as it turns gray. He saved a family, and they'll still keep him behind bars. You hear footsteps. Not fast, not commanding, just heavy. Judge Wallace. He stops in front of the cell, eyes red from smoke and something else. He's holding a box. He clears his throat once, twice, then pushes the box through the bars. Elijah doesn't move. Wallace says, "It's your things. From your room. Metal. Letters. They were in the fire. I thought you might want them." Still, Elijah says nothing. So Wallace tries again. "I didn't thank you." A pause. Then, "I don't expect you to forgive me." You sit frozen, not daring to breathe. Then Elijah speaks. 3 words. Low. Calm. Precise. "Why did you?" Wallace blinks. "Why did I?" "Sentence me." He doesn't shout it. He just says it like he deserves an answer. "Because he does." The judge exhales. "Because I saw your skin before your service." Then, almost like he's spitting out a tooth. "I was wrong." Silence stretches. Then Elijah stands. Walks to the bars. And for the first time, they're not the ones separating them. They're the ones defining them. "You sentenced me," Elijah says. "Then asked me to save you." The judge nods, barely able to hold his eyes up. "And you did." Another nod. "Now what?" Elijah asks. Wallace doesn't answer. He leaves, and the hallway stays dark. But something in the air feels cracked, like maybe shame is letting light in. Later, Elijah opens the box. Inside, the bronze star, blackened at the edge. A bundle of letters from fellow soldiers. One from his mother, yellow with age. And the photo Wallace's wife clung to in the fire. It's of a black soldier, young, grinning, arms around 2 white comrades. Elijah turns it over. There's handwriting on the back. France. 44. We made it out. You see something shift in his face. Not forgiveness, but remembering. That once, far away, someone looked at him and saw brotherhood. Not threat. Not target. Just man. And that's what he carried back. Not the war. The hope. Even now, behind bars, he still holds it. And maybe that's what keeps him from breaking, even when everything around him already has. Morning rises slow over Briarfield, painting the sky in pastels too soft for a town this tense. But something's different. People speak in shorter sentences. They glance toward the courthouse a little longer. The paperboy forgets to shout his headlines. The town breathes, but not deeply. Not yet. You make your way down Main Street, past the burnt husk of the Wallace estate. The fire's out, but the smell lingers. Sit, wet ash, and old wood that gave up too soon. A pile of blackened beams still smolders near the gate, like grief that refuses to cool. And near the ruins, a folding table. On it, a coffee urn, a tray of biscuits, and a stack of flyers. Corporal Elijah Bell saved this family. Will we now save him? No one stands behind the table. It doesn't need a face, just a truth. You watch people approach. Some stare. Some take a flyer. One old man pockets 3. By noon, the flyers are on every telephone pole. One taped to the courthouse door. And in the sheriff's office? They're everywhere. He doesn't tear them down. He just reads one, over and over. Back at the jail, Elijah hears footsteps. Heavy. Familiar. Judge Wallace. Again. He doesn't bring a box this time. He brings a chair. He places it just outside the cell, turns it around, and sits. "May I?" he asks. Elijah looks at him and says nothing. So Wallace talks. He doesn't rehearse, doesn't posture. He confesses. He tells Elijah about his father, a judge too, who taught him law but not justice. About the first time he ruled against a black man and felt nothing. How that numbness grew like rot. How war changed people, but not the ones who needed changing most. He doesn't cry, but his voice cracks like floorboards in winter. He says, "I sentenced you to silence. You gave me back a scream." Then he reaches into his coat, pulls out a file. Elijah steps forward. It's his case. Reopened. Wallace says, "New hearing." I'm stepping back. Another judge. Fairer one. Elijah takes the file, but doesn't look inside. He's not checking for hope. He's carrying it. News spreads like fire, but this time, it warms instead of burns. By sunset, the town gathers outside the jail, not protesting, not chanting, just showing up. Lanterns line the sidewalk. A boy plays harmonica on the curb. Off-key, but earnest. Someone lays a clean shirt on the jail steps. Someone else brings a chair, sits silently beside the sheriff. A woman from the diner hands out lemonade. Not because it's hot, because it's time. Inside, Elijah watches through the bars. And for the first time, his face softens. Not because he's free, but because maybe, just maybe, someone finally sees the weight he's been carrying. And instead of asking him to hold more, they're starting to lift some of it. Together. The hearing is set for Friday. Not a week from now. Not whenever the court finds room. This Friday. 2 days. The speed feels strange, like the system is stumbling over itself to look human again. You walk past the courthouse Thursday morning, and there's already a crowd, not loud, not angry, just there. Some are leaning on canes. Others holding coffee in silence like they're both sacred. At the center, a bulletin board someone dragged out from the church basement, now pinned with notes. Thank you for walking back in. For my grandfather who was never heard. We see you, Corporal Bell. The sheriff now stands outside the jail, not as a warden, but as a wall between Elijah and the whispers. He doesn't hold a gun, just a clipboard. And when asked why he's out there, he says, I'm making sure no one forgets who's still inside. You step into the jail just as Elijah finishes tying his shoes. Clean ones. The pair that someone left on the steps last night, perfectly his size. He buttons up the donated shirt, straightens his collar like he's reporting for roll call. Not in war. Not in court, but in truth. Then Judge Wallace appears, not with a speech. With a question. Can I walk you there? Elijah pauses. Thinks. Then nods. So they walk, side by side. Down the corridor, out the doors. Into daylight that doesn't sting quite so bad. People stand as he passes. Not to honor. Not to worship. Just to witness. Because moments like this aren't made. They're earned. The crowd parts slowly. And at the top of the courthouse steps, Elijah turns around. Sees the town. Sees his own name on signs not made to sell him something or scare him, but to remind him, you matter. Inside, the courtroom is full. So full that the pews creak like old bones bearing new truth. The new judge enters. Younger. Calm. Skin the same shade as Elijah's. He looks over the room. Then down at the file. No speeches. No delays. Just one line. We will hear the full case of Corporal Elijah Bell. And just like that, the door that was shut creaks open. Elijah takes the stand. Not nervously, not vengefully, but like a man who's waited too long to be seen whole. He talks about the war, not the gunfire. The brothers. White, black, Puerto Rican, Jewish, Southern farm boys and Harlem poets. How they huddled together in snow so cold it cracked your teeth just breathing. How they didn't ask what church you went to. Just if you were alive. He talks about what it felt like to come back, to cheers he never received, to doors that never opened, to laws that cracked like whips with ink instead of leather. He talks about the man who pushed him, and how instinct isn't a crime unless you're wearing the wrong skin. When he's done, there's no clapping, only breathing. Deep, slow, cleansing. The judge asks if he has anything else to say. Elijah stands, looks out at the people, and says, I didn't come here to prove I'm good. I came to remind you I'm human. That should have been enough. Then he sits. The courtroom stays still for 1 full minute. And it might be the most honest silence the town has ever heard. The verdict comes without delay. Not because it's rushed. Because it's clear. Case dismissed, the judge says. Sentence vacated. Record expunged. No cheers. Just a slow rise. People standing, row by row, not for applause, but because some truths deserve to be met on your feet. You watch Elijah close his eyes, just for a second, and when he opens them, something's changed. Not in the room. In him. He steps down from the witness stand, hands loose at his sides. His shoes click gently on the courthouse floor. Each step is steady, not triumphant, not dramatic, just a man walking in his own name again. Outside, the sun waits for him. And the people? They stay. They don't go home. Because freedom this late still deserves company. The first person to greet him is the teenager from the general store. He holds a paper bag. Inside, another pair of socks. Same kind Elijah bought the day he was arrested. I owe you those, the kid mumbles. Elijah nods. Accepts them. Then there's the baker. The barber. The woman who always sat at the back of church, who now holds his hand a second too long, like she's trying to apologize without words. But none of that's what stops you. It's Judge Wallace, standing at the bottom of the steps. No longer in robes. Just a man. Older. Smaller somehow. He reaches out a hand. But Elijah doesn't take it. He just looks at it. And says, You had the power to break me. A pause. But you didn't. Another pause. You just let the system do it for you. Wallace drops his hand and nods. Elijah walks past him, not out of bitterness, out of clarity, because forgiveness is a song best hummed alone. And sometimes, you don't sing it for the other person. You sing it for your own throat. Later that night, the town holds a gathering, not official, not organized, just people in the square with folding chairs, lanterns, and voices too full to sleep. There's no stage, no microphone, but when Elijah arrives, someone brings him a chair. He sits, quietly, and listens as a teenage boy stands up and reads from a letter. It's from a soldier, a friend of Elijah's from the war. Words scrawled years ago on paper that nearly didn't survive the ocean home. I don't know what they'll give you back when we return, it reads. But I know what you gave us out there. Your courage, your clarity, and the kind of hope we didn't deserve, but needed anyway. The boy finishes, folds the letter, and hands it to Elijah. You see the veteran's eyes close again. But this time, it's not weariness. It's rest. Weeks pass, but the story doesn't settle. You still hear it in the footsteps on Main Street, a little slower now, like people are trying to walk in rhythm with something that matters. The barber shop has a photo on the wall. Elijah in uniform, face smudged from battle, grin small but true. Someone framed it next to the clipping from the newspaper. War hero walked free. Court finally caught up. You see it on the diner chalkboard too. Veterans eat free, all of them. A little underlined note underneath. Even the ones we forgot first. Elijah doesn't go back to his old home. He rents a room above the old tailor's shop, keeps to himself. No parades, no interviews. Just mornings with strong coffee and long walks. He waves to people when they wave first. He's polite, but never smaller than he is. Some people try too hard now. Others still can't look him in the eye. But most, they just learn. Slowly. On a quiet Wednesday, the sheriff drops off a package at Elijah's door. No note, just a box wrapped in brown paper. Inside, the courtroom transcript, the original sentence, and a single new page stapled on top, stamped in clean ink, vacated. Elijah folds it once, then places it under the metal on his dresser. He doesn't frame it. He doesn't burn it. He just lets it exist, like a scar you stop picking at, but never forget. You hear whispers around town that Judge Wallace hasn't returned to the bench. They say he asked for reassignment. They say he started showing up at the library, reading history, policy, stories from voices he used to ignore. Some laugh, call it guilt. Others say it's too late. But Elijah? He doesn't speak on it. Because what someone does after the fire is their own weight to carry. One evening, Elijah receives a letter in the mail. From Wallace. Typed. Neat. For paragraphs. You don't see all of it. But you hear the last line as Elijah reads it aloud, barely above a whisper. Some men deserve a second chance. You were one of them. I hope I am too. He folds the letter, places it inside the Bible his mother sent him from Louisiana. Then he sits on the porch, watching dusk paint the buildings in slow strokes. And for the first time, a boy walks past and says, "Thank you for your service." Not loud, not performative, just real. Elijah nods. That night, someone starts humming on the corner. Low, familiar, an old war tune. Another voice joins in. Then another. Not celebration, not protest. Just people remembering what it means to stand for someone, even if you're late, even if they stood alone first. It rains the next morning, not the kind that lashes windows or drowns sidewalks, but that soft, steady fall that makes everything slow down and listen. You walk past the courthouse and see the flag at half-mast. Not for a holiday, not for a president, for a man who lived in quiet. The town's oldest veteran passed in his sleep, Mr. Harmon, 94, who once told the paper he fought 2 wars, one overseas and one back home. His funeral is set for Sunday, and they're expecting a crowd. But before that, there's something else. A letter arrives at Elijah's door. Handwritten. No return address. Inside, a program. Veterans Memorial Day, special dedication ceremony. And one line underlined in blue ink. Corporal Elijah Bell to lead the procession. He doesn't speak when he reads it. Doesn't smile. Doesn't frown. He just folds the letter carefully, presses it flat with the palm of his hand, and sets it on the small table near the window. That Sunday, you watch him dress slow. Not in a suit. In his uniform. The same one. Still fits. He buttons each piece with care. pins the bronze star last, wipes it once, not to make it shine, but to honor it. Downstairs, people wait. A small marching band, local families, young cadets in crisp new blues. And there, Judge Wallace. No robes, just a simple black coat, his hands clasped like he's trying to remember how to stay still. Elijah steps out. The crowd doesn't erupt. It hushes, because some men don't walk into applause. They walk into recognition. As he passes, children wave small flags. An elderly woman presses her hand to her heart. And from the side of the road, a man with no teeth and a gospel voice starts singing. Musical note. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. Musical note. Others join in, not loud, but rich. Not polished, but full. By the time they reach the cemetery, the rain has stopped. The earth smells awake. The headstones glisten. And as Elijah helps fold the flag over Mr. Harmon's casket, you feel it. That invisible thread between men who carried more than rifles. They carried weight. The service ends. People start to leave. But Elijah lingers. He walks to a stone near the edge of the yard. A name half-faded. No flowers. No marker. Just carved letters. Private Louis T. Gentry. 1919 to 1944. Elijah kneels. Pulls from his coat a small wooden cross he carved himself. He presses it into the soil. And says nothing. Because some goodbyes don't need sound. They just need witness. As he rises, a young boy tugs his coat. Asks, "Did he fight with you?" Elijah pauses. Then nods. Yes, he did. The boy stares at the grave. Then looks back up. Was he brave? Elijah doesn't answer right away. Then, with a voice so soft it feels like a hymn. He didn't run. That's all you need to know. There's a photo in the local museum now. Just one. In a plain black frame. No spotlight. No velvet rope. It shows Elijah standing on the courthouse steps, eyes steady, shoulders back, the folded flag from Mr. Harmon's service in his arms. No headline, no plaque, just a handwritten note beneath it. He carried more than we ever saw. You stand in front of it one afternoon, listening to the slow creak of the ceiling fan and the whispers of school kids on a field trip behind you. One girl points and asks her teacher, "Was he famous?" The teacher doesn't say yes. She says, "He was right." Back outside, the summer sun lays across the street like a blanket. There's a man sitting outside the barber shop with a radio beside him. Static crackles between songs until a voice slides in low and calm. A recording. Elijah. It's part of an oral history project. They interviewed him a month after the hearing. Just a single mic, one room, and a voice that doesn't ask for attention, but gets it anyway. "I wasn't trying to change anything," he says. "I was just trying to come home." Pause. You spend enough time fighting something overseas, you hope the fight is done when you get off the train. But it never was. Not for me. Not for a lot of folks. Another pause. But that day in the fire, I didn't go in to save a judge. I went in to save people. That's what we did in the war. That's what I still believe in. You sit on the bench and listen until the tape clicks off. No applause. Just the sound of breeze pushing dust. And across town, Judge Wallace writes. Not laws anymore. Letters. You see one in the mailroom of the town archive, opened and filed. Addressed to the State Bar Association. He's stepping down permanently. The final paragraph reads, "Justice without humility is performance. And for too long, I mistook my robe for righteousness. I now choose silence, that others might speak." It's signed with just his name. Not Judge. Just Roy. Later that week, a new plaque is installed at the courthouse gate. You don't expect it. Most don't. But there it is, etched in clean brass. In honor of Corporal Elijah Bell, whose courage reminded us what justice sounds like. When someone finally listens, he never asks to see it. But word is, he walks by sometimes. Early morning, before the sun hits too hard. He pauses, tips his hat, and keeps walking. Fall slips into the town like a storybook turning its page. The air sharpens, the trees blush. Everything feels quieter, but not the kind of quiet that hides. The kind that remembers. Leaves scatter across the front steps of the courthouse, now swept every morning by a pair of volunteers, both veterans. Neither speak much, but they hum the same tune while they work. A low, old melody Elijah once hummed in his cell. You see it now, how things shift not with speeches, but with habits. At the schoolhouse, a 5th grade class reads a new unit called Local Heroes. Elijah's name is there. Alongside his photo, a quote. He didn't raise his voice. He raised the floor we stood on. You step into the back of that classroom one afternoon and watch the teacher read aloud a portion of Elijah's testimony from the hearing. The kids listen, brows furrowed, pencils still. When she finishes, she asks, "What did Corporal Bell fight for?" One girl raises her hand. Respect. Another, truth. And one boy, small voice, says, "Peace that feels fair." No one laughs. No one fidgets. They get it. Down by the river, Elijah fishes on Sundays. Not to catch anything, just to sit. To breathe. He likes the stillness. Says it reminds him of the sound right before a storm, but without the fear. Sometimes people join him. Sometimes they just leave a thermos of coffee near his tackle box and nod from the path. He nods back. And then one evening, he brings something new. A journal. Black leather. Worn edges. Inside, pages and pages of handwriting. Not neat, but full. You glance over his shoulder once. The first line reads, "They almost took my name, so I'm writing it down before anyone else does." He writes letters too. To men he served with. To their children. To the families who never got closure. But there's one letter he never mails. It's to Wallace. He keeps it tucked in the back of the journal. You've seen him read it. Just once. The first line is simple. "I saved your family. You saved my voice." Then pages of silence. Blank. On purpose. Because not every debt needs repaying. Some need recognizing. That fall, he's asked to speak at a town event. Veterans Day. He declines. Instead, he writes a statement. The mayor reads it aloud. Elijah's words echo across the town square like a hymn carried by wind. Courage isn't what you do when people are watching. It's what you refuse to do when no one else is brave enough to stop it. People applaud. But not wildly. Not loud. Just long. Slow. Measured. And afterward, they leave candles on the courthouse steps. Not to mourn. To mark the ground. The place where silence broke. And a man named Elijah taught a town how to listen. Winter leans in early that year. The trees go bare with the kind of honesty only cold weather brings. The sky turns that soft, quiet gray where every sound feels closer to the bone. Streets slow. Words grow softer. And Elijah? He walks more than usual. Not for errands. Just to see. He walks past the house that used to belong to Judge Wallace. It's rebuilt now, not large, not loud, just solid. You see a new family there. Kids with chalk on their hands and laughter in their throats. The porch light is always on. There's a wind chime over the door that catches sunlight like it's collecting old regrets. Elijah nods once when he passes. Never stops. The library has a new display near the entrance. Local history, real heroes. A glass case holds the Bronze Star replica and a copy of the overturned court transcript. There's a guest book where people can write what they've learned. You skim the pages. I didn't know. I see it differently now. He gave us a second chance. I won't waste mine. One afternoon, a young man waits for Elijah on his porch. Tall. Nervous. Eyes like someone who's carried too much too early. He introduces himself. Says his grandfather served in the same unit overseas. Says his family never knew what happened after. Elijah invites him in. He brings out a shoebox. Inside, photographs, medals, letters stained with dirt and time. One photo shows 3 soldiers shoulder to shoulder in a trench. The young man points at one of them. That's him, he whispers. They sit in silence a while. Then Elijah hands the boy the photo. It belongs to you now, he says. The boy doesn't know what to say. So he hugs him. Not stiff. Not formal. Just the kind of embrace that bridges decades of missing pieces. Outside, snow starts to fall, light at first, then steady. The kind that softens every edge. That evening, the mayor calls. There's to be a ceremony in the new year. They want to name the town square after Elijah. He says no. Not out of modesty. Out of knowing. He tells them. Name it after the people who stood still when I needed them to step forward. Pause. Then name it again, after the ones who did. So they do. Bell Square. And beneath the nameplate. For those who listened too late, and chose to listen better. On New Year's Eve, the whole town gathers. No fireworks. Just candles. One by one, they light them in a circle. Then someone hums. A low, old song. And then another joins. And another. Until the whole square hums in the dark, arms linked, eyes closed, breath fogging in the cold. Elijah watches from his porch. He doesn't sing. He doesn't stop them. He just smiles. Because this isn't noise. It's memory made gentle. It's history warmed back to life. And for once, it's sung by more than one voice. The new year opens not with noise, but with a note. Handwritten. Folded inside the town newspaper. Slipped under Elijah's door in the quiet hours of dawn. You changed us, even when we didn't deserve it. Thank you for standing when others Saturday, a citizen. No name. Just ink. And sometimes, that's enough. You find Elijah out by the river later that morning, wrapped in his coat, boots in the frost-tipped grass. He's not fishing, just watching the water. Still. Reflective. The way someone watches a lifetime from the shoreline. You sit beside him, not saying much. Because truth doesn't need narration. He speaks first. Took him long enough. He doesn't sound bitter. Just tired. And a little amused. I waited years to be seen. Now I can't walk 10 feet without someone trying to hand me pie. You both laugh. Then fall quiet again. The river keeps moving. Back in town, the school has added a new elective, oral history and truth-telling. The first assignment is to interview someone who's lived through change. Elijah's name is at the top of 5 students' lists. He agrees to meet them at the community center. Doesn't prepare notes. Doesn't bring his medal. Just brings himself. They ask questions gently, some hesitantly, like they know they're borrowing something sacred. What kept you going? Elijah pauses. Looks at his hands. Then says, I stopped waiting for fairness. Started walking toward dignity instead. One girl, maybe 12, writes it down word for word. Like gospel. At the end of the hour, a boy with braces and wide eyes raises his hand. Were you ever angry? This time, the pause is longer. Then Elijah says, yes, but I didn't let it teach me how to speak. Only how to listen. That night, the students paint a mural in the alley near Bell Square. It shows a man walking through fire, not with fear, but with purpose. Behind him, smoke. Ahead, sunlight. And above his head, painted in gold. Sometimes the bravest thing a man can do is not walk away, but walk through. Elijah walks past it 2 days later. Stops. Stares. And for a moment, you wonder if he's going to say something. But instead, he reaches out and traces the flame with his finger. Softly. Like he knows exactly what it costs to carry heat without burning. And he knows he's not alone anymore. Not in this town. Not in this story. Spring doesn't arrive, it returns. Like someone who used to live here, left for a while, and now walks slow enough for everyone to remember her name. The flowers come back first. Then the breeze. Then the sound of children's laughter, loose, wild, the kind that tells you the world hasn't given up on joy. And in the middle of it all, Elijah. Still walking. Still watching. But now, he's not alone on the porch. Neighbors stop by more often. Sometimes with pie. Sometimes with questions. Sometimes with nothing but their presence. He welcomes them all. Not with speeches. With space. The Lena May Institute, a town or two over, invites him to speak for their storytelling series. He turns them down, twice. The third time, he says yes. You're there when he steps on stage. The room is small, intimate. Folding chairs, warm lighting, a mic that hums a little when tapped. He stands at the podium, clears his throat once, then says, I'm not here to give you answers. I'm here to remind you that we were never the question. You hear gasps. Soft ones. The kind born from sudden clarity. He tells the story. Not just his, but the stories within his. The soldier who never made it home. The letter he still hasn't sent. The look on Judge Wallace's face that day in the fire, not fear, but disbelief. Like he just realized he was wrong. Elijah says, you can't rebuild trust with words. You do it with time. With actions no one asked for. When he finishes, they don't clap at first. They rise. And then the sound comes. Not wild. Not roaring. Just full. Afterward, a boy approaches with a worn paperback copy of To Kill a Mockingbird. Says it reminded him of Elijah. Elijah smiles. That book gave us a story about a white man doing right. Then he gently points to his own chest. This one's about a black man doing enough. The boy doesn't forget that. A few weeks later, Bell Square hosts its first annual community storytelling night. No stage. Just lanterns and benches and one big open circle. Everyone brings something. A memory. A lesson. A question. Elijah listens. He doesn't always speak. But when he does, people lean in. Because when someone's voice has walked through fire and come out steady, you don't just hear it. You follow it. Later that month, a local artist unveils a statue near the edge of the square. Not of Elijah standing tall, but of a chair. Empty. With a folded uniform draped across the back. And a pair of worn boots beneath it. A plaque reads, reserved for those who carried more than we could see. You watch Elijah see it for the first time. He doesn't smile. He just sits beside it, tips his hat, and rests. Because maybe this is what healing looks like. Not the erasure of pain, but the space to sit beside it without flinching. Years roll by, not loud, not fast, just steady. The kind of passing that settles into buildings, into trees, into memory like dust you choose to keep. Bell Square becomes more than a place. It becomes a rhythm. Weddings happen under its lanterns. Protests begin at its fountain. Veterans sit in its shade on Sunday afternoons, boots crossed, stories retold, but softer now. Elijah walks slower these days. Not out of weakness, out of presence. Every step feels deliberate, like a punctuation mark placed in the right spot. You find him one spring morning, sitting on his porch with a radio beside him. Gospel plays low. His Bible is open. His hands are still strong. He looks up as you approach. Funny thing, he says, nodding toward the square. I used to walk through that place with no name. Now it wears mine. He chuckles, not proud, just amused by time. Truth moves slow, he adds, but it gets where it's going. That afternoon, he receives a letter from Judge Wallace's grandson, a boy who wasn't born when it all happened. The envelope is neat, the handwriting careful. Inside, my grandfather told me what he did. What you did. He said your silence in that cell echoed louder than his voice ever could in that courtroom. He said you didn't save his life. You gave him the chance to live differently. I hope I live that way too. Elijah folds it, places it in the Bible. No smile, just breath. Because some things you don't celebrate. You carry them. You carry them like the first hymn you ever heard in a wood-framed church, or the weight of your father's coat on your shoulders the day you first stepped into the world. That evening, he returns to the square. No crowd. Just a little girl playing hopscotch near the statue. She sees him, runs up, holds out a drawing. It's him, in uniform, smiling, beside a house, a fire, and a group of people holding hands. She says, "We learned about you in school today." He kneels, takes the drawing gently. What did they say? She shrugs. That you were brave and kind and didn't let the fire win. He chuckles. That's close enough. As she runs off, he stays there a while. One hand on the statue, one hand on the folded paper. And when the sun dips low, he walks home slowly, not because he's tired, but because the road behind him is finally quiet. Not erased, not forgotten, just at peace. Let it all soften now. Let the fire fade. Let the boots rest. Let the words slow to a whisper. You've walked through a long story tonight, one made of silence and smoke, of medals and jail bars, of truth that outlasted injustice, and a man who never shouted, but somehow still changed everything. Breathe in gently. Picture the square at dusk. The lanterns glowing amber. The bricks warm beneath your steps. You can still hear the humming, the same one from a jail hallway, now lifted into open air. Elijah's footsteps are gone now. But not the echo, not the lesson. Sometimes justice doesn't ride in on lightning. It walks, slow and steady, dressed in old boots, carrying a name people tried to forget. And when it arrives, it doesn't ask for revenge. It asks for recognition. Now let that truth settle. In your chest, in your breath, in your bones. Maybe tonight, before you sleep, you'll remember that history isn't made loud. It's made with quiet decisions. With someone saying no when the world expected silence. With someone walking into a fire because it was the right thing to do, not the easy thing. Maybe tomorrow, you'll walk a little slower. See a little deeper. Listen a little better. Because someone like Elijah once did. Sleep well now. And carry his voice with you.